who just joined us, welcome again to our third session of winter weather preparedness and spotter training. We're offering this up. We've had a lot of success with our severe storm and tornado spotter training program, and also great attendance and good feedback from the spotter training sessions last spring that were necessitated by the pandemic. So with the opportunity to reach more people through these webinars, we've decided to go ahead and create this winter weather spotter talk, and also to good places to obtain information about winter weather, as well as some basic safety tips. And so thank you again for joining us on short notice. And anybody who joined late, wanted to mention this presentation will be about an hour or so, followed by some time for questions at the end. And with the possibility of some parts of our area getting some accumulating wet snow on Saturday, you do have the opportunity to ask questions about the upcoming weather forecast if you so choose. So with that being said, we'll get it started, and thanks again for joining us. So a quick overview of NWS Chicago office. And our staffing profile is pretty similar to the other 122 offices across the lower 48 United States. And we cover, and on the map, we cover northern Illinois, parts of central Illinois, and portions of northwest Indiana. And locally staffed 24/7, 365. And if you're not aware, we're the ones who issue winter weather, severe weather, high winds, heat, all those headlines that get messaged oftentimes by the TV meteorologists. We're the ones who are responsible for those. We also do public forecasts going out to 7 days. And another thing that you may not know is that we're responsible for aviation point forecasts for the airports. And in our area, obviously that includes O'Hare Airport, one of the busiest airports in the entire world, a little bit less so in 2020, obviously, but in a normal year, one of the busiest airports in the entire world. And then Midway Airport, another busy airport on its own. We also provide forecasts for mariners for the nearshore waters of Lake Michigan along the Illinois and portions of the Indiana shore, fire weather forecasts. So we provide decision support for outdoor events when those are held. And so if you weren't aware, those are some things about us that you might not have known about. Here's how we're going to get you ready, prepared for winter. We haven't had a lot yet. It was quite mild the last 2 days. So we're going to talk about what our typical winter weather is like in terms of temperatures and snowfall. A little bit of the science of winter weather, if you're interested in learning about that. Winter weather safety topics, how to get the latest forecast information, and measuring and reporting winter weather. So that'll be some of the basics on snow and ice measuring. And a winter 2021 outlook. We did offer a webinar last week that was more in depth on this, but I'll quickly touch on the outlook for the rest of the season at the end of this talk. So our typical winter, this map here on the left is a regional look at the normal seasonal snowfall for the Midwest region. And that's going to be the climate normal period that we use. They're 30-year periods. This is 1981 to 2010. Coming up here in 2021, here in a couple of weeks, we're moving to the 1991 to 2020 normal period for climate data. So this map will change a little bit. So you can see that there's a decided south to north, as you would expect, lower to higher latitudes. Can expect higher snowfall amounts. And then some of the red or pink colors are the lake effect belts that, in addition to being farther north, they're in line for snow picked up from the moisture from the Great Lakes. We'll zoom in a little bit here on our more in our local area, and you can see the same thing, but on a smaller scale, a certain gradient in amounts from lower to the south and higher to the north. And also you can see the lake effect belts. Looking at our primary climate sites, Chicago and Rockford, the normal seasonal snowfall and snowfall season is going to be whenever the snow starts in the fall until whenever it ends in the spring. How much snow falls during that time is what we call our seasonal snowfall. And then we have our normal, and that's about 36 to 37 inches for Chicago and Rockford. On the map there, you can see that down in central Illinois and west central Indiana, our average snowfall for the season is only about 20 inches. You move north into northwest Indiana's lake effect belts, the average increases to 40 inches or more. And then into Michigan, especially, where they're more favored to get more frequent episodes of lake effect, they get even higher totals. Then moving farther north in Illinois, you start to get into 40-inch plus amounts, with a little bit of contribution of lake effect, but it's a little bit less common to occur on the west side of the lake. But important to note about snowfall is that even though it's we give this normal amount, snowfall is quite volatile. It's based on temperatures, what are the storm tracks like, and so there's a lot that goes into it. So even though we're saying what the normal snowfall is, the typical range that doesn't fall like without of bounds of what is common in a winter season is, especially in the Chicago and Rockford areas, is somewhere in the order of 25 to 45 inches. Did want to point that out. So even if you get a little bit below normal, a little bit above normal, that's kind of typical for the winter season. So you want to move ahead here. What's our typical winter like? Well, even though we're not as cold as some of our neighbors to the north and in the north, especially in the northern plains, everybody likes to talk about Chicago being so cold and so snowy. And, we have terms like Chiberia that went viral back in 2014 when we had extreme cold for almost the entire winter, extreme cold and snow. And of course, a couple Januaries ago when we had some places get down to near even just under 30 degrees below zero, record setting there. So yes, we do get cold, and it can happen quite frequently. Even in the warmer seasons in the winter, you could still end up with a decent amount of cold weather days and nights. So just looking at wind chills alone, what I think anybody would consider, even those who have lived in this area for a long time, anybody would consider zero or below or zero or sub-zero wind chills quite cold. And you can see in the excuse me, the blue shades here on the blue shades on the map, the dark blues and the slightly lighter blue there, that we're looking at on the order of 2 weeks to as much as a month or more of days that have at least an hour of a sub-zero or sub-zero wind chills. Looking at just high and low temperatures for the day, we have quite a preponderance of temperatures at or below freezing, with 40 to 50 days or more in a typical season. Lows, highs of 20 or colder on about 2 weeks, and lows of 10 or colder for about a month of the season. And then lows of 0 or colder can be around 10 days or so, sometimes more. I'm going to throw my mask on here. I forgot about that, taking it off just to eat. But we are going to move on to some winter weather science, and that's just some typical conditions for our winter season. So in the winter season, we have air masses across North America, and the map there on the right kind of shows you what the common air masses are and where they originate from. So our typical air mass on a dry day in the winter is going to be continental. On a dry and normal cold for the winter is going to be continental polar. And then up in the Arctic region, you have continental Arctic. That's the very cold air that sometimes pays a visit to our area. Our typical air mass, again, is continental polar. So you notice how dry it feels in the winter. A lot less moisture is able to be stored in the air. That's why it's cold, and it also is dry. You need to apply lotion and stuff like that. So, but then when we get precipitation, especially for our heavy snow events, what we usually need is moisture from the Gulf of Mexico flowing northward, or sometimes it can be originated from the Pacific and systems that are crossing the country. And that's going to be an injection of maritime tropical air that originates from the Gulf of Mexico region and flows northward into a developing storm system. And then that warmer and more moist air is thrown back across the cold and dry air. And that comes down in the form of wintry precipitation, snow, mixed precip in some parts of the storm, maybe just plain rain. And that would be especially the case in terms of mixed precip or rain if there's too much warm and moist air overwhelming that could be driven by the storm track that it takes can cause freezing rain and sleet and even plain rain in spots. Here's a nice animation, a nice graphic for winter precipitation. Snow is going to be when the entire atmosphere is at or below 32 degrees, and at or below meaning, you know, it could be a couple degrees above and still be snow at the surface, sometimes as high, in rare cases, as near 40, but that almost the entire atmosphere is going to be near or below that key 32 degree, the freezing point. And snowflakes will form up in the atmosphere and be able to fall all the way to the surface. Then we move on to rain. Well, in the winter season, rain actually starts as snowflake higher up in the atmosphere. But then it meets a layer of air that's above freezing, and the snowflakes melt. If there's no way to refreeze them, if the air stays above freezing the rest of the way down, it'll fall as plain rain. Then we have freezing rain, which is one of the most hazardous conditions to drive in. And that's going to be where we have the same melting that occurred in the previous description, but then near the surface, it encounters an air mass that is at or below freezing, especially the colder, the more likely to have some significant freezing rain issues. And that's going to be the rain freezes on contact with the surface and can cause icy spots on roads and parking lots and sidewalks. Finally, sleet, or sometimes known as ice pellets. You have melting of snowflakes. They encounter that mild air that melts them. Then they encounter a deeper layer of sub-freezing conditions again that refreezes those raindrops back into ice pellets that then come down to the surface as what we know as sleet. Sometimes we could have a mix of all the above when there's kind of conditions that are right near or above that 32. You could actually see a mix of snow and sleet. You could sometimes see a mix of sleet and freezing rain. What are the most impactful aspects of our winter events? Well, the longer, the worse typically, but the timing itself can be a huge problem. We live in a hugely populous metro area. Those of you who commute to work in a normal year know how bad the traffic can be, and then you add in winter weather into that, and that's when things can wreak havoc. So the timing coinciding with a weekday commute can cause impacts that would be somewhat on a weekend to major, traffic disaster on a weekday morning or afternoon. The duration will determine how much snow and or ice can fall during the event. And, again, precip type and amount. If winds are accompanying the precip, it becomes a bigger issue as well. That can cause a further reduction of the visibility than just the snow falling alone, especially if the snowfall rate is high. And then if there's freezing rain occurring, winds accompanying it can actually cause the freezing rain that accumulates on power lines and on tree branches cause damage and power outages. And then what's the temperature during and immediately after? So obviously the colder, the worse the impacts can be, especially in untreated road surfaces. Then are you going to warm up after that? If it doesn't warm up, then it's going to take longer to clear the winter precipitation and the longer the duration of the impacts. On this slide here, we talk about what are our most common types of storm systems to produce snow in the winter season. Well, we have what's known as a southern plains or panhandle low that originates from the southern high plains, typically tracks off to the east-northeast, and that often can produce the heaviest snow amounts in any system that we see. It often has a very tight gradient in snowfall amounts, possibly also on the side where the snow changes over to rain. And there could be a big difference in what type of snow falls. And if these are paired with a mechanism to generate strong winds as well, strong low pressure, big cold high pressure moving in, we could get at least periodic near whiteout or blizzard conditions. And also, depending on the wind direction, how cold the air mass aloft is, you can even get some lake enhancement contribution to the snow. Then we have eastward moving central plains low, which can produce on their own some pretty significant amounts of snow, maybe not quite as much as these systems tracking out of the southwest. It's more of a west to east oriented band and can be quite broad in terms of the amounts. And they're actually pretty tricky to forecast as well. And then we have in this system right here in the lower left, Alberta clippers. You may hear clipper type systems. They don't necessarily have to track straight from Alberta, but they usually track from somewhere across Canada, the Canadian prairies, and move southeastward across the region. They can sometimes pick up some Pacific moisture and create some heavier precip snowfall rates. But these are actually our most common events to get light to moderate accumulations in the winter season. They're usually shorter duration. They can actually have some pretty high rates. And then you think back, well, if they're timed poorly, a clipper with a couple inches of snow timed right with a commute can cause huge impacts to travel, even if you only get a few inches of snow. They can occur with pretty cold temperatures, so the snow will be lighter and fluffier than their counterparts, the southern plains or the central plains low. And finally, when we have a cold Arctic high set up near the region, it's just to the west or northwest, and then some sort of low pressure tracking well east of the area, that can set up conditions favorable to get bands or multiple bands of lake effect snow. Most favored in our area is going to be northwest Indiana for northerly or northwesterly winds that move across the comparably milder water of Lake Michigan and inject some moisture, and then that falls in the form of snow. We can be heavy at times, whiteout conditions, extreme snowfall rates, sometimes accompanied with wind as well. And so it's been quite a while since a really classic lake effect event for our portion of Northwest Indiana lake effect belt, but and even Illinois can get these sometimes when the winds are more out of the northeast. Well, we're heading into 2021, and would be remiss if we didn't point out that this upcoming February is the unbelievably enough 10-year anniversary of the Groundhog Day Blizzard, the beginning of February that year. It had 21.2 inches of snow in Chicago. Think about that. That's actually the third largest snowstorm on record for the city of Chicago. Rockford, I think, was a top 5 snowstorm as well. It was a kind of classic southwest system, tracked up out of the southwest of us and tracked to the northeast across Indiana. Had a huge, strong Arctic high building in behind it. And the combination of a strong low pressure system and this high created the conditions favorable for northeasterly winds out of the northeast, gusting as high as 60 to 70 miles an hour. It even caused some damage at places like Wrigley Field. These prolonged and extremely strong northeasterly winds created prolonged blizzard conditions. If you'd like to learn more about that event, we do have an extensive event wrap-up on a page on our website there, and the link is on that slide right there. You can see the huge swath there of at least 10 inches of snow, in some places 20 inches or more, and that's actually pretty uncommon for the Midwest region. That's more likely something you'll see along the East Coast. And then talked a little bit about lake effect already, so I won't spend too much time here, but a little bit about the process behind how lake effect snow forms. So you take like cold air mass, cold wind blowing across the relatively warmer waters, especially when they don't have ice on them yet, and that warm air and then rising air allows precip to form in the form of snow, and then it dumps downwind of the lake. And where the lake effect falls is going to be determined by the prevailing wind direction from. So if the winds are out of the northeast or northeast, you may get into northern Illinois and extreme northwest Indiana. If the winds are more due northerly, you'll probably be in the northwest Indiana. And then as the winds become more out of the northwest, you'll favor maybe eastern Porter County, and then into LaPorte County and points east in Michigan and north central Indiana. Sometimes these lake effect bands can penetrate pretty far inland, where we get snow even down into Jasper and Newton counties. In some rare cases, we've seen lake effect bands reach as far as Iroquois County, Illinois, on very rare cases. Pictured there is one of our most significant lake effect events of the 2010s. It was pretty localized, but extreme rates brought some spots of nearly 2 feet of snow in northern Lake County, Indiana. So if you've lived there quite a while, you probably remember that event well. Another winter weather phenomena that is of growing importance because of noted major impacts, huge multi-car traffic accidents, is a snow squall. And that just means an intense burst of snow and winds, really short duration, can cause at least brief whiteout conditions, and especially if there's really cold or rapidly falling temperatures, the snow can quickly accumulate on the road and cause extremely hazardous conditions. The looping webcams there are from the Duluth, Minnesota area. You can see they had a snow squall there in April of this year. And the webcam really just shows you how quickly conditions can deteriorate. In our area, this phenomenon of snow squall is not all that common. We do get them, but they're not really that common. But they can occur, and we'll talk a little bit more about a product that the Weather Service has unveiled over the past few years for these setups. We also have another term called known as snow ratio. That's going to be basically, in layman's terms, how wet or how dry and fluffy the snow is. Think about how easy it is to make a snowball out of it, or snowman. So the higher the moisture content, the wetter the snow is, the easier it is to make a snowball or snowman. And the worse it is, the more tiring it is to shovel snow in it. And then if it's really cold, you can get some lighter and fluffy snow. So our typical snow ratios, and the rule of thumb here is that for every 10 inches of snow, there's about an inch of water. Our typical snowfall ratios during the winter are about between 10 and 15 to 1, or roughly in the 12 to 13 to 1 range. If we do get accumulating snow anywhere on Saturday, we're looking at well under 10 to 1, so a really wet snow, a really sloppy, slushy snow. Lake effect events can have snowfall ratios of 25 to 30 to 1 or higher. Wind chills, we always hear the term wind chill, but do you really know what goes into it? And this table right here talks about the science behind it. So when there's no wind, the average temperature of the body is about 98.6 degrees. Under calm conditions, our body radiates some heat and actually creates a little bit of a layer of warmth right near our skin in the cold surroundings. When the wind picks up, that layer of warmth, that bubble of warmth is broken up and then speeds up heat loss by whisking away the warmth from our skin. So if you are not adequately dressed to be outside, your body temperature will start to drop. And 95 degrees is the danger point, hypothermia onset. And that's an extremely dangerous health condition caused by extreme cold. Also, you have frostbite potential in cold conditions. Extreme cold, wind chills, frostbite onset can occur in as little as 10 to 15 minutes. Final thing I want to touch on is ice jams. In the winter, especially when we're in a prolonged cold snap, the area rivers can develop plenty of ice cover, extensive and even thick ice cover on them, the rivers, creeks, and streams. If we have a sudden warm up with rain and melting snow, it'll break up the ice and can cause flooding of low-lying and poor drainage areas. Big chunks of ice could get blocked out, and then that'll cause the water level on the river or creek to rise. Once that ice flow begins, again, the ice can jam up on obstructions. When it stays cold, when it rapidly gets cold and you're in a prolonged cold snap and you have a long period of extremely cold weather, we can actually have jams from just the freeze ups themselves. Huge quantities of extensive thick ice can form, and actually block the normal flow of the river. And where the ice jams occur can cause localized flooding along near and along the river there. So with that said, we'll move on to winter weather safety. So for some general safety tips. So before winter weather, and just in general for the winter season, just be ready for the possibility of a major storm occurring. That means you're basically off the grid for about 2 to 3 days. And it's kind of cliche, you know, when there's a forecast of a snowstorm, everybody, all of a sudden the milk and the bread and the snow shovels are flying off the shelves. But in reality, though, be prepared before that, because we do see that scene repeated in supermarkets. So, you know, if you do, you know, just be prepared out ahead of time. Make sure your supplies are stocked up before you might be stuck indoors from a major storm. So in that graphic there, some of the key supplies, having water, multiple days of food, obviously charged up mobile devices in case of a power outage, and all the other things that you normally need. And then, you know, for driving in winter weather, we encounter it multiple times a year, and even in mild winter. So, you know, just the daily prospect of driving in the snow and ice can cause a hazard. But when we get into really dangerous winter situations, major snowstorm, significant, you know, glazed over roads, like a skating rink, you know, those are times where the general rule of thumb is, you know, if you can avoid driving in it, do so. If you can postpone it, if it's not essential travel, you know, it's just best to avoid it if you can. But there are cases where you will have to venture out into dangerous winter travel conditions. And in those cases, be prepared out ahead of time in case you get stranded. Out means having an emergency supply kit in your car. You're also going to want to fill up your gas tank before winter weather hits in case of power outages that can affect even the gas stations themselves. So I won't go over all these supplies here, but you can see it, building an emergency supply kit, some of the things that go into it, and having that ready in case you need to drive in dangerous conditions. We have a video here that I'm going to show, and it's just preparing your vehicle for winter. Hopefully you've already done some of this, but it's just going to be a review. And also want to point out to make sure to keep, on average, about a half a tank of gas in to prevent fuel lines from freezing. Hold on for 1 second. I want to flip back into presentation mode here. Somehow got out of it. Here we go. All right. So, you know, during wintry weather, it's just stay put. Fewer cars on the road means they can get cleared. The roads can get cleared faster. Also, you know, you being out on the road, sometimes accidents can occur in these conditions, and accidents happening can block off snow plows. Also, you know, block emergency access to the scene of accidents if there's more cars on the road. Indoors, be careful with heat sources as well. And just know it doesn't take much snow to create havoc. So for indoor winter safety, just make sure you check your smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. And remember, if you do start your car and it's parked in the garage, make sure you open up the garage before starting the car, because that can cause a dangerous buildup of carbon monoxide within the garage that can seep into the house. That is something that is easy to forget. And ice storm preparedness itself. So wouldn't say that ice storms are all that, like major ice storms are all that common here in our area, but they certainly do happen. Our most recent major significant ice storm was in February of 2019. But there are things you can do to prepare for the possibility of them occurring, and they're listed right there. You know, do some trimming work on weak or damaged branches on shrubbery or trees around your house, and actually don't leave the vehicle wipers raised. Believe it or not, it can cause more damage. And some of the general idea of having supplies on hand and food, etc. Not parking underneath cars, parking your car underneath trees in the event that limbs come down. And of course, keeping your devices charged in the possibility of a power outage. If the power does go out, here are some ways to keep warm. Close your blinds. Close off rooms that are not in use to avoid wasting heat. And also dress warmly indoors, loose fitting, lightweight, warm clothing, and also stay hydrated and stay nourished. And also to avoid heat escaping out, to prevent some of that from occurring, you could actually stuff towels or rags in cracks underneath doors. So if you do need to venture out on the road in the winter, here are some general safety tips. So just it's like clockwork. Whenever the first snow occurs, people forget. Even if you've lived here for many years, you see people that all of a sudden forgot that they live up here in terms of how they drive. And that means just drive slower than normal. You know, whatever your normal driving speed is, just slow it down. You don't know if you're going to encounter slippery conditions. Even if it looks like the road is mostly clear, you could encounter a patch of ice or snow. Leave more room, additional follow distance between you and surrounding vehicles. Don't use cruise control, key thing there. And also remember not to brake quickly or take too sharp of turns. Stay alert at all times when you're driving. And take breaks even if you're on a longer road trip. And also, I'd pointed this out earlier, don't crowd the plow. Give them ample space out ahead of you, and only pass when it's safe to do so. And finally, the top bullet point up on the screen there, this is going to be if you do unfortunately get into an accident, try to pull your car off the road and use hazards, flares, reflectors, or anything else to warn other drivers. And stay off the road, call 911, and wait for the police to arrive. So that means anything you can do to prevent a bad situation from getting worse. And I've already kind of touched on this topic, but these minor events can really create havoc. We know this from living in this area that, you know, an inch or two of snow, if it's in the teens or 20s and maybe the roads haven't been treated in a while, it can seem or be just as bad because when snow amounts are forecasts are not all that high, we may not even have a winter weather headline out like an advisory. We may just put out a special weather statement or something like that. So there's going to be more people on the road, and so when you have the conditions of snow and or ice on the road, and more people out there, people may think the conditions are not as bad as they really are. So always, once again, just slow down, increase your following distance. Know that even if it was just a little bit of snow, conditions would be quite dangerous. We had a fortunate instance just in the month of April, a really short-lived snow event, but temperatures were cold enough, especially on that snow fell just a couple inches or an inch or two and that occurred and coated some of the bridges and overpasses in Chicago. And there was multi-car pileups in the city on that event. And it was just a minor event. So that's just one example. Freezing rain is, and I already said this as well, it's just terrible, especially when it's cold and the roads ice up. So it can be certainly more dangerous than snow itself in terms of traction for your vehicle. So you're going to want to watch out for falling branches and power lines if there's been a long period of freezing rain and it's windy as well. And just if you have the ability to postpone your drive, don't drive if you know there's been freezing rain or if it's still occurring. And your health keep your health in mind for clearing snow. Obviously, it can help if you have a snow blower, but if you do snow shovel, just know that to take it easy, take frequent breaks, stay hydrated, stay warm and dry. If you have some underlying health conditions, it can shoveling heavy, especially heavy wet snow, can cause a lot of stress on the heart. So just keep those things in mind to stay safe this season. Dressing for cold weather can range from typically chilly conditions to cold and extreme cold, where you're talking about wearing multiple layers, light, loose fitting, but warm, and most importantly, wearing things to cover your extremities, where heat loss is the most rapid. So wearing a hat, wearing gloves, and especially mittens, which are even better than gloves, things to keep out the wind, waterproof boots, snow pants if recently snow has fallen, face mask, not just for staying safe during the pandemic, but also to protect your face from frostbite. Ways to spot frostbite, and that's going to be signs of redness, and if they say there's pain in the skin area, it might be the first sign. Other signs of frostbite onset include white or grayish yellow skin area in coloration. It could feel unusually firm or waxy, and especially if the skin has been numb and is not returning its feeling. And then hypothermia, dangerously low body temperatures, shivering, exhaustion, confusion, fumbling hands, memory loss, slurred speech, drowsiness, in infants who obviously can't tell you how they're feeling, bright red, cold skin, and extremely low energy. If you did take a person's temperature and it's below 95, call 911 immediately. And did want to point out that hypothermia is not just a winter thing. It can occur any time of year. It can occur in the summer if it's a little bit cool out and you go and you are in the lake or in a pool. If you're in there for a while and you haven't dried off and anything, your body temperature can start to drop. So just wanted to mention that. We're going to now talk about some ways to get the latest forecast. And there are some important things to know about winter weather forecasts. They're challenging, and we do get a lot of, let's say, jokes made about meteorologists, and it's understandable in a way, thinking about it, how it may seem to someone who isn't involved in it and it doesn't know, isn't a weather enthusiast, doesn't know a lot about how this works, is that these forecasts can sometimes change pretty quickly, can change significantly in terms of how much snow, what areas are getting it. These snow or ice totals can vary greatly over short distances. And again, the forecast itself can change pretty frequently, and sometimes in cases the change can occur not too far out from the event. We had some of those the last few winters where we were looking at potentially several inches of snow, and all of a sudden things kind of fell apart, so to speak, leading into the event. And that certainly can happen, and it's frustrating for us like it is for you. We understand that. So, and also don't get too overly focused on how much occurs, but focus on the impact. So obviously, even if it's a little bit of snow, you don't have to think of it that way. Just think about, well, we're talking about impacts of travel. It could be really cold out, so that inch or two of snow can cause major travel impacts. The snow that falls can be very heavy and wet and cause more impacts to more of a health hazard. The impacts can be elevated from high winds, causing blowing snow and whiteout conditions. And always know your terminology. We'll go on the next slide, talk about this a little bit more. Know the difference between warnings, watches, and advisories, and always rely on dependable sources for weather information. The era of social media has made any amateur weather enthusiasts, giving them the ability to reach a lot of people with a click of a button. So know who you're getting your weather info from when you share it with friends and family. find your most dependable source like the Weather Service or your most trusted TV meteorologist in the local area and trusted private sector sites. So going back to the summary of winter weather products, we got our watch. And the only thing you need to know in this, we are aware that sometimes the difference isn't well understood, the difference between a watch and a warning. The watch phase of an event, whether it be for snow or ice or sleet, is going to be when significant winter impacts may occur. If we've issued a wind chill watch, dangerous, extreme cold, life-threatening cold may occur within the next few days. Not will occur, and it's kind of our confidence in occurrence when we issue this product. But then we do issue a warning that does mean significant impacts are imminent or already occurring or will occur within the next, let's say, 12 to 24 hours, or life-threatening cold will occur. So keep that in mind. That's your difference between watches and warnings. And the difference between watches and warnings is seen in even other types of phenomena like high winds or heat or severe weather. When you're in the watch phase, that weather that we're alerting for may occur. Conditions are favorable for it, but it's not quite imminent or it's possible within the watch area over the next couple of days. And then for our lower end events can be certainly impactful. We'll have advisories, and that means that more moderate or minor impacts will occur. That's high confidence in occurrence, but lesser overall impacts. And you can find some more information at the link below. You've heard the term blizzard. The last real true blizzard probably that the whole area experienced was the Groundhog Day Blizzard. The last blizzard warning we issued for multiple counties in our area was in February 2015 with another major snowstorm. But a blizzard does have a certain definition, and that would be blowing snow caused by 35 mile per hour or higher winds and gusts, causing 1/4 mile or less visibility for a period or duration of 3 hours or more. So you can have brief blizzard conditions, but to meet the definition of blizzard conditions, those whiteout conditions have to occur for at least 3 hours. And also keep in mind that falling snow is not a requisite for blizzard conditions. Not too common here, but can happen out in open areas, but especially out in the high plains area, the northern plains, they can get ground blizzards just by the winds and all that snow on the ground, or it can even be just an inch or two of snow on the ground blowing around, can blow across the ground and into the air and cause just an extreme drop in visibility. So if you're driving elsewhere, and especially in that area, think about the possibility you may even encounter ground blizzard conditions. For our headlines, for winter weather headlines, when blizzard conditions are thought to be possible in a snowstorm, that will be part of the winter storm watch phase. There's not a separate product for the blizzard. Now, I think there used to be, but it's just going to be under the winter storm watch heading. But then when blizzard conditions are thought to be imminent, that's going to be a blizzard warning. That's a special product of its own. If you have a NOAA weather radio, it'll actually tone alert on there when we issue a blizzard warning. Ice storms, returning to them, that's going to be if we have significant accumulations of ice. There is a criteria for it. It's when we would get over 1/4 inch. And then obviously the higher, the worse it can get. And it can cause power outages. The trees and limbs start to come down, especially with high winds. So remember packing an emergency supply kit. And again, for the headline phase for these events, the potential for an ice storm, but not yet really high confidence when it's a few days out, is going to be, again, a winter storm watch product issued for that. Then when confidence has increased enough that there will be significant impactful amounts of freezing rain, ice accumulations, we're looking at an ice storm warning being issued. And again, the last time we issued one of those was in February 2019. And I did mention earlier about snow squall, the special product created for those. Think of it similar to a severe thunderstorm warning, a tornado warning, a flash flood warning. They're going to be short duration for targeted areas, what we call polygons. And the text up here on the slide shows how the product will look if we ever issue these. They're usually going to only be about 30 to 60 minutes. as a heads up, and they do go out to wireless emergency alerts on most smartphones today. And so again, they will tone alert weather radios and alerts most cell phones via WIAs. And we will not issue them usually during winter storms or blizzard warnings that are already in effect. And we usually won't even issue them when advisories are in effect. We do have there also pictured what these will look like on automated products that go out on Twitter. If you do find yourself in a snow squall, just try to safely exit the highway, drive slowly, and as always, increase your following distance. For the most up-to-date forecast information, weather.gov/Chicago. On social media, search NWS Chicago, at NWS Chicago on Twitter. And of course, local media, TV, newspaper, radio, social media, apps, trusted private sector. That's what our website looks like. And on the top right there, we have some annotations made of what you would see for a winter event on our website. If we have what's known as a situation report, that's just basically briefing slides where you give some more in-depth information about the event or potential event. And then our official forecast can be found by typing in your location or zip code in the box in the top left over there, pointed out on the graph on the inset there. You also can just click on your general location on the map, and that'll generate the classic point and click forecast that we are actually responsible for creating here. And then the weather story, our popular graphics that we've worked hard to improve these over the years. They're going to be on the bottom left there. Sometimes we may have a graphic highlighted that you can click on more towards the top of the page. Now I'm going to take some time to do a quick demo of weather.gov forecast points. This is a new decision support driven thresholds. It's a nice slick website that just was recently released. It's experimental. It looks like that. You have tabular form. You could have a chart form, graph form for hourly weather graphs that look a little bit nicer, more eye-pleasing than what's been available in the past. So I'm going to take some time to do a quick demo here now. So forecast points, that's what it looks like when you click on it, and change domain. So I'm just going to zoom in here and done, and zoom in to our area, and we'll, let's say, click on the southern DuPage and Will County border here. That's about where I live in the Naperville area, and here's what you get. So it's kind of nice because it may point out some threshold information for weather. If it's really cold, the colder color is going to stand out. If there's high chances of precip, it'll stand out as a darker green. If there's a possibility of snow occurring, etc. So it'll show up in these tables. You can look at it in more days and things will be highlighted. And you can configure these on your own. So you can highlight wind speeds. So there's a lot of user configs available here. And here's what the hourly graphs look like. And again, these are a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than what's been available. And that's basically it right there. Going out the next week. And you could even see snowfall forecasts as well from that'll generate some of that point and click. So I won't spend much any more time on that, but if you are interested, that's the website, and that's how you get to it. So I'm going to go to back to full screen here. Here's another index that's been created to help package and display winter weather impact information. It's called the Winter Storm Severity Index, WSSI for short, in abbreviation form. And that's basically going to be the potential impacts from a combination of how much snow accumulation, the weight of the snow, that's going to be a product of what the snow ratio is, how wet or dry or fluffy it is. If there's any blowing snow expected, are there rapidly falling temperatures that could cause a flash freeze, any ice accumulation expected? And the warmer the color, so you go from the yellow, orange, red scale, and even a purple there for extreme historic potential impacts. This is an image of an event that occurred in November of 2019, showing a pretty significant event that occurred in the Northern Plains and Northern Great Lakes region, showing a swath of potentially major impacts there. So, likely resulting in major disruptions to daily life. If we had this product back in 2011 for the Groundhog Blizzard, we would have had the whole area lit up in extreme disruptions to daily life, historic stuff like that. We saw what happened on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago as an example. And we returning to that yellow, orange, red scale, and we've already used this on some of the graphics we've sent out. If you frequently use our website and see our products on social media, snowfall probabilities. There's also a test bed for testing these graphics being done by some of our neighboring office. So when we look at the probabilities of accumulating snow of a certain threshold, we can display it in this form to kind of hone in on an area where the potential is greater, but we're not yet confident enough to really publicly emphasize the forecast accumulations of wintry precip. So this is just an example. There's actually one on our website right now in effect for a probability of accumulating of just light snow accumulations this weekend. So the oranges are going to be the medium range and the reds are going to be the high probability. So that'll just give you an early glimpse a few days out, 3 days out of here are some of the areas where we're a little bit more concerned about accumulations of a certain threshold, which can scale up to impacts as well. So we're going to certainly be using this more often, and also wanted to say, if you have any feedback for us on these graphics, always feel free to drop a line on our webmaster email, as well as on social media as a comment or a tweet back to us. If you like these graphics, if you see any things that you would like to suggest to improve them, we're always open to suggestions as we continue to work to improve our graphics. So during winter weather, again, go back, monitor our website for information. Social media, we're going to post frequent updates. Your most trusted sources are going to post frequent updates, obviously. And also check road conditions websites. Illinois has a great color-coded page for county and area level impacts, winter weather impacts. So county, road-based. Indiana has a really nice interface as well. So just check on those before you leave, especially have the ability to postpone your travel before heading out and getting stuck on roads completely packed with snow and ice. Take a look at these sources of information. And then that's going to bring us to measuring winter weather and reporting it. So measuring snow and ice, and this is just the basics. If you want to get more advanced in what you do, there's ways to do that, but I'm just going to cover the basics on this. So why are snow observations needed? Why are more of them needed? Well, we have a map. We have a photo here that was really taken from last winter from Kansas from an airplane that showed an exceptionally narrow band of accumulating snow that fell. Don't really pay too much attention to the actual amounts there. This is just to demonstrate that we went over a really small area from basically for no snow to some places seeing several inches of snow within a few miles. So when we fill in that database, increase the density of our observation network from volunteer observers like you, we could fill in the blanks from what we can glean and from a situation like this where we have a really sharp cutoff in amounts, and it can help us know what's going on. So this is really why it's important, why we want and why we ask for these snowfall observations. Sometimes neighborhoods can have a difference of a couple inches in snow. We've seen cases of extreme gradients from the city seeing falling snow but not accumulating to 30 miles away in Indiana getting over a foot of snow. That's happened. So that's why we want these observations. So measuring snow, the basics is going to be having a clear, flat, non-grassy surface away from trees and buildings, and just a general rule of thumb there is going to be about twice as far away as the obstruction is tall. So how tall is your house? Move away twice as high as that in length away from your house when you go out and measure, or your apartment building. Use a ruler, ideally with 1/10 inch increments. You can purchase those in stores, but also I think through CocoRa's, which we'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec, to take several measurements around the area. Snow fall depth can be affected by winds redistributing, scouring out areas. So even if you follow some of these basics, it can be tricky at times, especially when it's really windy. So take several measurements around the area that you choose to measure from, and then take an average to give the amount that you report, and avoid do the best you can to avoid drifts and narrow flat surfaces such as railings on your back deck. So snowfall and snow depth. Snowfall is going to be specific to that event. So you may get, let's say, 3 inches of snow. Snow depth is how much is on the ground. So you may have a depth that's basically equal to how much snow fell in the event when there's been no other event. But let's say it stays cold and you get another several inches, let's say 5 inches on top of that. So if the snow didn't melt at all or compact too much, that same 3 inches plus another amount on top can be an 8-inch snow depth. But the amount of snow that fell in that event can vary. So when you report, just remember that when you're reporting snowfall event specific, make sure you're reporting how much new snow fell and not how much snow depth there is. So you're going to want to be sure to have a way to tell the difference between them, know how much snow approximately was on the ground before the event, so you can do some estimations there to give us an accurate reading. You can certainly report both to us, but make sure you're clear which is which. And we have our first polling question here up on the screen. And I have, so can you measure just on your deck or patio? So we're going to let this roll for about a minute. And we're certainly seeing a bias towards the no answer. Very few say yes, and then some people say sometimes. Those joining us tonight. Give it a little bit more time for people to vote. So most people are thinking no is the right answer. All right. And poll is closed. I'm going to show the, so we had 64% say no, 27% say sometimes, and 9% yes. And I'm going to show up on the screen here the right answer. Well, the best answer, and this is a little bit of a trick question, but we have sometimes highlighted because yes and no is kind of cut and dried. You know, saying yes at all times means you're probably going to a place that's not going to often provide accurate measurements. Saying no means there's no situation in which you can. Well, if there was very little wind or drifting, it might be okay, but remember to not measure from a deck railing. Make sure it's a surface at least 2 by 2 across. So just the sometimes means if the conditions are right and not from a railing. That's not going to be an accurate measurement. Measuring ice is more difficult than snow. Snow itself can be difficult. We've been measuring, those of us who've worked here for a long time and have been in the agency for a long time, it can be extremely challenging to measure snow when there's wind. We're out in an open area down here. We can just have a heck of a time doing that. But ice is extremely difficult to measure, but you can do it. So when you report, first off, measurement of ice in tenths of an inch, where you measured it, and are there any impacts occurring from it? There's actually 2 types of ice to measure, a term for it, flat ice. That's going to be ice on an elevated surface like a deck railing. And I talked about how not to measure snow on a deck railing. You can actually get a flat ice measurement on a deck railing. So for snow, no. For ice, yes, if you can, if it's providing an accurate reading. And ideally, that surface is flat, and you can measure the thickness to the 1/10 of an inch. Radial ice is probably the more common way to be able to do it, and that's going to be the radius of ice on branches. Take a few measurements and report the average. If the ice amount of ice, the width of it, the radius of it on either side of the branch, and what you can see is the same, that's the measurement you report. But if it's different on either side, that's when you take the average. So measuring radial ice, you're going to want to find a tree or shrub, and then use a ruler to measure the thickness of the ice on a branch closest to 1/10 of an inch. And again, if uneven, use the average, and less than 1/10, report it just as a trace. If it's slippery out there, but you can't measure the ice, that means very little ice is falling, but it could still be impactful. That could be freezing drizzle. Omit the width of the actual branch. That's important to keep in mind. And I'll leave up on the screen here nearest 1/10 inch increment conversions on regular rulers. So if you don't have a 1/10 inch increment ruler, you can do a conversion there to report it in 1/10 of an inch increments. So we have a group example for our next poll, and we're going to go over that now. So what's the amount of ice that you would report accurately here? Are we able to open that one up? This one's not too hard if you were following the past couple of slides. And since we have overwhelming responses in terms of percentages here, we could probably close this one out in about 10 seconds. Actually, we're starting to see a rally for one of our responses there. So we'll give it a few more seconds, close it out. All right. And most people said 2/10 of an inch. Some said 0.4. But again, you want to take the average. So it was an uneven amount of ice on either side of the branch. Uneven amount of ice accreted on this branch. So you take the 0.1, the 0.3, 0.4 divided by 2. I won't do any complex math to get that answer, but that's it right there. 0.2, too small to measure. Just report a glazed donut. I mean a glaze of ice, if that occurs. So remember, if you can't measure it, a glaze of it's actually a good report to have, because sometimes we get in these situations with patchy freezing drizzle that can really cause extremely dangerous travel conditions. We've had some of these events in the past few winters. All it takes is some ice coating on road surfaces, and they can become absolute skating rinks, parking lots, sidewalks, really dangerous. And you don't even need these 10th or 2 or 3 amount of ice. You talk just a trace can cause huge impacts. So for when you're reporting winter weather, and really when you're reporting any weather to us, impactful weather to us, just be safe. An estimate is better than no report at all, but tell us if it's an estimate. And we're always happy to help if you have any questions, and we do appreciate each and every report that you send us. So where to make your report to? And social media is probably the easiest way to do it. We love pictures and times. Make sure you report your location as well. And I'm going to do a quick demo from our website on how to get to a new reporting form for any type of weather, really, but I'll focus on how to report snow through it. So I'm going to click here and go to our website. And here we have some drop-down menus that when you hover over them, and underneath current hazards, you see the third link down is submit a storm report. And that's the new page that was created in the past few years. And then within this page, which you'll see in a sec, there's a link to a page that allows you to send a snow report directly to the Weather Service through a form. Obviously, you can go through social media. If you're a CoCoRaHS observer, you can report them through the CoCoRaHS website and even on social media as well. So I'm going to focus on the reporting form, but this page is real nice because it links directly to our social media feeds. You can send an email to us. It sends you a link to the MPing app that you can download and report precipitation types, and also get some definitions of different types of weather here. So snow, how much fell, what period of time. So it talks about the measuring tips. When we get into severe weather season, it talks about those, the basics of reporting and some of the basics of what that is. So, and then freezing rain and icing as well. So I'm going to go here and click the submit report form, the top link on this page on how to report. That brings us to this page, inws.ncep.noaa.gov/report/report. And you click here, please select a report type. We'll click on snowfall here, drag down, click next. Just for ease here, we'll do current time. Say we're measuring it. How much snow fell? Let's say you're talking 7.5 inches. And then if there's any details, heavy snow and blowing snow at report time. Click next. And you could actually use your device's location. You could search your address. You could find an address. Just wanted to point out here, not that you would ever do this, but some people like to mess around with reports and send out false or exaggerated reports. And you know, there isn't an extensive internet history picked up on these things, but they can grab people's locations through here through IP and stuff like that. So just remember not to, you know, whenever you're reporting information to a government agency for official usage information, that to just be honest about it and report information. So I'm not going to go through this process because we didn't actually have 7 inches of snow anywhere, but you would go there from location and then go through the process to get that report sent out. We could actually get that on one of the websites that we use here in the office. Going back to the presentation, I talked about the MPing app. It's a popular app. For winter weather, that's just precip type. It's going to be geotagged to your location when you use the app, when you have your location services on. And that's only going to be the way to have it. Settings, location on. That's how it would look in a real event. You'll see these reports popping up on the map. It's available on both the App Store and on Google Play, and not used for measurements. And you report as often as you like. We found really useful for this in mixed precipitation events when the precipitation type is changing. When we're looking at a change from snow to sleet to freezing rain, we could actually see the progression of this occurring. When there's roughly a dividing line that kind of stays steady for a little bit, we could see that dividing line in precip types. We could see it on our radar a little bit, but having reports from the surface helps even more to figure out where things are happening. And where do these reports go? They go on maps to help us show what snow fell. On our website, there's another page that can display these. We get maps that generate them in color-coded contours. News networks can grab them. We grab theirs. We put these on our website and on social media. Going back to our website real quick, if you do want to get that snow report page, it's called Local Snowfall Reports on the second drop-down menu, and it's right here. And if we had snow, it would pop up here, and you'd have dots on the map, and you could look and see your report popping up if we used it. Did make a plug for the CoCoRaHS organization, Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow organization. We work closely with them. It's a volunteer org. You could use a free app or their website, and they're used in multiple ways by other meteorologists across the industry. And if you want some more information, there's a link there below. I did also want to make an advertisement, a plug for our River Ice Spotter Network. Joining us in the background behind the scenes was our hydrologist tonight. And if I didn't show this slide, he'd be a little mad at me. I'm just kidding. But River Ice Spotters, we have a good network of spotters that live or work near the rivers in our area that can report on ice buildup and any presence of ice jams. And requirements are just the ability and willingness to safely observe and report ice at least once a week. And the one day that's required is going to be the Monday morning report. And there's a Google form that you would get. So any information, if you want some more info about becoming an ice spotter, the link on the bottom there. And I think we have that up on our website as well. And just remember to keep safety in mind whenever you're reporting any sort of weather to us. So final review before I get to a quick outlook for the rest of the winter. Be prepared. Prepare home and vehicle for the winter. If you haven't yet, we're in meteorological winter. Be informed. Know the reliable sources. Know that the forecast can and will change. And if you see someone that you know sharing bad, unreliable information, let them know. That's not a great source. Report to the Weather Service through various means that we talked about here. Sign up if you'd like to do this more regularly. The COCORA's volunteer program, and if you really want to report every day, there's another program called the Co-op, the Cooperatives Observer Program. That's great as well. Look on our website for more information there. Without further ado, for the last minute here, talk about the winter outlook. We're in what's known as a La Nina episode in the tropical Pacific. And in short, that's just colder than normal water temperatures roughly along the equator in the Pacific Ocean. The warm water, the warmer than normal counterpart of La Nina is the more well-known El Nino. These occur in regular cycles every couple of years. And this change in water temperature anomalies, change where the jet stream sets up, can influence our temperature and precip patterns, and the link is strongest in the winter. Since we're going to be in a La Nina this winter, it usually means maybe storminess, more precip. We're heading into it. It's been dry this month. We're actually looking at lots of rain and maybe some snow this weekend. And the pattern may stay more active as we move deeper, as we move towards the solstice and deeper into the winter. The temperature signal going into the winter is not always that strong, and there's a lot of variability. Usually that's common any winter, but we can see some really huge changes in temperatures in La Ninas. Some of the recent indicators for the season, it's been mild. We had a couple of days of in the 50s, even 60s in spots. We may end up as a warmer winter overall, but it doesn't mean we can't get a period of lots of cold and snow. It may just be less of it for the winter. Typical impacts in this can be basically what you have is a strong North Pacific jet carving a path across the country, somewhere across the Ohio Valley or thereabouts. And that storm track often means wetter conditions up into the Great Lakes. Our most recent events, you can see the range there in temperatures in the colors here, but you can see that all of them had at least a little bit above average precipitation and liquid equivalent for the winter. Snow was all over the map. We had some really snowy ones in the late 2000s and the beginning of the 2010s. The winter that had the Groundhog Blizzard, which was immediately followed by another La Nina that had very little cold and snow. It had the historic unprecedented heat wave in March of 2012. And then we had another mild La Nina in 2016-17 that had 60s and 70s in February. It snowed in December. It was a little chilly. Then we were basically spring in January and February. Finally had a little bit of snow and cold in March. Our last one was technically near normal in the temperature department, but we had a lot of huge swings that winter, and snow ended up near normal. So the winter season, that's kind of the classic La Nina look. Warmer conditions favored south and east, colder conditions along the northern tier. If the indicators, some of the data that we look at points towards warmer, maybe these warmer colors end up in our neck of the woods. But the green colors mean there is some decently high confidence that we'll end up with above normal precip, not necessarily snow for the winter season. And with that said, we have some time for questions here. If any arose during the presentation, or if you have any about our possibility of some wintry weather this weekend. So Scott Lincoln and also the other forecaster on duty, we're looking at some of your questions. So if we have any, we'll answer these over the next 10 to 15 minutes. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us tonight on short notice. And we may give this presentation again another time this season, but that's it for now. So we'll go over some of your questions.
Well, Ricky, turns out everyone has apparently got all the information that they needed from you, because we have no questions. Although we did let's see. We did have one just come in now asking if there's going to be a copy of the presentation made available, maybe on our website or somewhere else. Are we sharing the slides?
Yeah, well, we'll probably put this up in recorded form on our YouTube and probably on our website as well. I'm not sure on the slides themselves, but we did make that available for our winter outlook that we presented as well last Friday. So we will make these available for people who weren't able to attend, and this was on short notice. So thank you for that question, and we will make this available to those that would like to share it with friends and family as a resource if they weren't able to attend. We also had some presentations from back in November. We can make some of those available, or this one, we'll figure that here after we end this talk right here.
Well, Ricky, you probably opened up the door to this next question. We have an individual asking what the outlook is for the snowstorm, what is the outlook for the storm on Friday and Saturday in terms of whether or not there will be accumulating snow?
Well, the question is, for whoever sent it, will there be snow? There's going to be snow somewhere in the north of the track of this storm system on Saturday, but the question is, will it be in our area? I showed you that we have a certain coverage area, then we have our neighboring offices. There's going to be some snow in the area, in the region, in the general region, somewhere between Iowa and Illinois and Wisconsin. But question is our big question for this storm, because what we do know is that we're going to start as rain everywhere, and there could be quite a bit of it tomorrow afternoon and through tomorrow night. Then, as we move on into Saturday, on the northwest side of the storm system, we're going to have some slightly colder air filtering in. The question is are we still precipitating heavily when the air gets cold enough for snow to allow for a changeover and then accumulating snow after that changeover occurs? Or does the precip lighten up? Do our temperatures stay well into the 30s where it's too warm for much in the way of snow, or if you might just get really sloppy, wet snowflakes mixed in? Those are the big questions that we're looking at. And on our website and on social media, we did put out a graphic that talked about the possibility of accumulating snow. And the orange and red areas are kind of pointing towards where some areas may see enough snow to whiten the ground and possibly coat some roads with slush. And not necessarily meaning a lot of snow, it just means whitening enough to whiten the ground an inch or two. There are the conditions that could occur in which some locations in far northern Illinois could see more snow than currently forecast, and that's going to be, do temperatures get forced down near freezing quicker, and is heavy snow occurring while temperatures are near the freezing mark? If that occurs, there is the potential for a swath somewhere of more than 2 inches, of several inches of snow, which could certainly cause more impacts. That's not what we're currently forecasting, but that is within the realm of possibility for this event. So it is something we're monitoring for. So our best advice, and this can kind of bring in some of the jokes that get told about meteorologists, is about being told, about what we do and how sometimes it can be so uncertain, is that really in this case, with the temperature wild card, with it starting mild, with there being quite a bit of rain prior to any changeover to snow, that adds more uncertainty to the forecast. Sometimes the forecast can be somewhat straightforward. If it's just looking at temperatures cold enough for snow, we're just basically forecasting how much will fall. That can be a challenge in and of itself, but that takes some of the uncertainty out of it. It adds some confidence to it. So depending where you're living, so let's say you live near the Wisconsin border, you have a better chance of snow enough to whiten the ground, possibly coat the roads. If you're viewing this presentation and you're in northeast, far northeast Iowa or Wisconsin, your chances are decent there as well. But things can really vary dramatically. A lot of the area is going to see mainly rain for most of the event, and then the accumulations could possibly get down as far south as near the Interstate 80 corridor. But the best chances of seeing enough snow to whiten the ground is going to be far northern Illinois, especially as you get north of I-88, I-90, and especially near the Wisconsin border, and also away from Lake Michigan. Since we didn't have that many questions, I could spend a little bit more time on this. The winds are going to be out of the northeast. The lake is actually pretty mild still. We're coming off of, I just got a suggestion from my colleague here to present on the screen one of our weather stories, and I will do that. Yeah, since we have a few minutes here left until 8 o'clock.
Yeah, and while you're getting that set up, we do have a couple other questions we'll try to squeeze in once you have that done, Ricky. We had 2 more come in.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we should have time. So Lake Michigan is milder earlier in the winter than later in the winter. And especially this season, we're coming off one of the warmest Novembers on record. So the lake is probably at least normal, if not warmer than normal for the time of year. So the lake is still pretty mild. So when the air is flowing from the lake, the air above the lake surface is actually modified by those water temperatures and kept a little bit above, well above freezing. So that same air mass coming over land, especially for areas near the lake. So in this case would be Chicago shore, the Lake County, Illinois shore, the Indiana shore. You're going to be talking, it's going to be harder to snow hard enough to accumulate there because the air coming off the lake is milder than the air farther inland. Before we move on to the next question up on the screen here, I'll go back to our website real quick and show some of these weather stories to highlight what I was talking about. So that was a great idea. So we use that yellow, orange, red scheme, and you can see the orange zone and the reds here, northwest, is kind of where the greatest potential exists for accumulating snow. And that certainly doesn't mean it will accumulate there. Things could go to the point where there's little or no snow. And we do point that out on the graphic. And the other note is for people who live along the lakefront, the strong northeast winds are going to cause high waves and further increase from already very high lake levels to probably cause lakeshore flooding. And we do have a watch out for that. So back to the presentation here, and we could answer those last few questions before we call it a night.
So the next one, I'll just jump ahead one question quick just because it's related to what you were just talking about. We have an individual asking if we know when specifically snow will fall heavily or lightly.
In this event, if it's pertaining to this event, the time frame in which snow could occur, and it may emphasis on may, come down on a moderate to even heavy clip for a time, is going to be probably during the daytime hours on Saturday. If things linger a little bit longer, maybe bordering the sunset time, which is before 4:30 this time of year. So sometime during the daytime hours primarily, certainly before the evening, we're probably going to be winding things down as we get into the evening hours on Saturday. So anytime from, let's say, later morning hours into the afternoon, if you're in a zone that could see snow, the best chance for it to come down at a decent clip is going to be sometime during the daytime hours, midday-ish, afternoon, as colder air moves in and possibly results in snow coming down hard enough to accumulate.
All right, so switching gears, we've got a question asking if we're planning to host an advanced Skywarn spotter webinar in the near future.
That's a great question. We've started to do a lot more of these webinars and have had good success and good attendance on these. So for the severe storm season, we've typically done the basic spotter class. We've talked about the possibility of doing more advanced topics. So what I will say is not over promising is I'm not going to say we will be doing one but I'm actually myself, I'm involved in the updating the spotter program. I'm involved in the process of what we present every year. So what I will say is we'll have a team together that will take a look and see if we can add an advanced topics spotter training class for the severe storm and tornado season. And on that note, for those webinars, for those spotter talks, we will be remote only because of the pandemic. So we're going to be planning to do several of these webinars for severe weather season. And that'll be coming up in the latter part of the winter and into the early spring and early to mid spring portion of 2021. So stay tuned for announcement on our website about that and on social media. And I have time for like one more question if we have any. Other than that, we'll be calling
And yeah, this person lucked out. We have one additional question.
Sure.
Generic about weather. How do bodies of water like lakes affect our local weather?
So lakes can play several key roles. So one of the most common influences on the weather is the formation of the lake breeze, and that's going to be what happens there is you have during the daytime in the spring and the summer, you have a pretty large difference can occur between the warm land and the cooler lake. That causes small scale high and low pressure systems, cooler high pressure, warmer low pressure over the land, and the wind flowing from that high pressure towards the low pressure causes wind direction to turn onshore from the lake. And then especially earlier in the season, there could be substantial cooling behind the lake breeze. That's one of the ways it occurs. And then the lake itself can modify the environment. We could have lake cooling. In some cases in the winter, on a mild day, if the winds turn onshore, we could actually have lake cooling as well. We could sometimes, like I described, in a storm, especially earlier in the season, you could have lake warming instead of cooling. So bodies of water provide a modifying influence because it takes longer to heat them up and cool them down. And the influence from Lake Michigan being a huge body of water is more than a small body of water. They can still have some influence. We can even get cooling pond effect snow or even river effect snow in some rare cases. The oceans are going to have even more influence on the weather because they're huge heat sinks. They cool down a lot slower. They can inject a lot of moisture into the atmosphere. So in a short, that's how they can influence our weather, and then also lake effect snow as well here in the Great Lakes. So I think that's all the time we have. Thank you again for joining us for this winter weather preparedness and spotter training class. We love doing these, so we might offer some more of these throughout the season. So stay tuned for updates on our website, and also for the severe storm season coming up for when we offer spotter training classes through webinar format. Again, because of the pandemic, there will be no in-person classes. And that's it for now. I'll be signing off. Thanks again. My name is Ricky Castro here at the National Weather Service.